Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everyone, I am so delighted to introduce today's guest, Robin Merle. Robin is the author of Involuntary Exit, A Woman's Guide to Thriving After Being Fired, which won the 2022 Gold Medal Nonfiction Book Award. She is the president of Robin Merle Associates, LLC, a fundraising consultancy, and the founder of the Professional Guide, which helps senior-level professionals succeed in their career transitions. A certified fundraising professional, she has more than 35 years' experience as a senior executive for billion-dollar nonprofit organizations, raising more than $500 million primarily for universities and healthcare. As someone on a mission to help people move forward with their career transitions, Robin coaches executives through the pain points of job loss to rebuild confidence and resilience. She also coaches development professionals to succeed in new roles. She is a frequent podcast guest and webinar host and has been a featured speaker at Chief, the Rutgers Center for Women in Business, the Johns Hopkins University Women's Leadership Conference, and AFP New York City Global, AFP being the Association for Fundraising Professionals. Robin is a proud graduate of the writing seminars at Johns Hopkins and graduated from Rutgers College as a member of its first class of women. Please join me in welcoming Robin Merle. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you, Tammy. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here. So, Robin, as you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to talk about your formative years and how those early years may or may not have informed where you are today. But take us there and share a little bit with us about those early years.
I happen to agree with you that early years play a greater role than we might realize in our later years. I grew up in my earliest years in Philadelphia. It was an early immigrant neighborhood, primarily for Jewish families and veterans coming back from the war. Ultimately, it was a tough place to grow up in Philly. And some of the things that I remember were how brutal it was to be in school. When I was in first grade, the bell rang after recess. I was walking along and I tapped a little pink rubber ball. You remember those? And a kid came up, took the ball and punched me in the nose.
Oh my goodness.
That's a good image for what it was like growing up there. So fast forward, I moved to a suburb in New Jersey. And then what was really formative for me was my teachers' education. I loved going to school. From an early age, I loved reading, writing. I was fortunate to have some great teachers. I learned, having witnessed firsthand how to come up against bullies, how to navigate relationships early on so that I would not be bullied or I could protect those who were. I was kind of very sensitive to that. And I bring that up because it really, without my knowing it, influenced a lot of my work in terms of being mission driven, having a very heartfelt, strong, visceral response to any kind of bigotry, prejudice, and bullying. So that influenced a lot of my work in the sense that whenever I was angry about something that I had witnessed, I would write about it. You know, people call it journaling, but I would write about it to get those feelings out and also to figure out what I thought about it. And I wouldn't just journal. I'd write stories, poems, scripts I wrote so that I could understand it better. And when I got older, it turns out the first jobs that I had, one was in advertising, which was persuasive. So figuring out again, how to appeal to the psyche of others and
Mm,
how to think like the reader.
mhm.
And then I went quickly, applied for a job as a writer at New York University.
Mm.
And that I did not even know it was in the fundraising world. I didn't know anything about fundraising.
Huh.
I had actually gone a step back. When I went to college, I went to Rutgers. As you said, I was
Mhm.
the first class of women there.
Yeah.
I loved that because, again, it was like
Mm.
protecting a few against the
Yeah.
many and learning how to be heard as a minority there at
Yeah.
Rutgers. That was a big public university for
Right.
New Jersey residents. And then
Yeah.
when I went to Johns Hopkins, it was exactly the opposite. It was a small private college. The special program I was accepted into was 14 fiction writers and 14 poets, and that's it. And the whole college had maybe another 1,000 undergrads, but I had never even heard of what a prep school was. Remember, I grew up in an immigrant neighborhood, went
Right.
to a tough public school, a public
Yeah.
university, and through my writing was suddenly elevated into a prep school area
Mm.
where I had no idea about the cultural influences of the people around me.
I'm curious about, when I hear Johns Hopkins, I think of medical research and medical
Right.
school and sciences. I never would have thought about a writing seminar at Hopkins. Was that something that you did after your undergraduate years or?
Right. It's after I did my undergraduate,
Yeah.
and frankly, I didn't want to go out into the workforce, though I had worked all along with college.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite job, selling shoes. I was already a salesperson selling stuff.
Funny.
And so people were more, the only writing program, or one of the few that was in existence, was the Iowa Writers program, which was highly competitive.
Mm.
Then Johns Hopkins, I think, started the second. I could be wrong, second or third writing seminar in the country, and it was led by John Barth. And yeah,
I know that name.
and he grew up in Baltimore and wrote about the pickle factory. And so John Barth, they started the writing seminars as part of their College of Arts and Science. The College of Arts and Science was in a certain area of Baltimore. It was like an oasis. It was not downtown. The
Oh,
medical center was downtown,
yeah.
and the city was not well resourced. Then
No.
downtown, it's funny you should mention that. I guess Fish Out of Water board, I don't know what it was with that. I applied for a job downtown at the medical center
Oh.
because where I was didn't feel real and gritty enough. And I did. And I applied as an editor for a physician's work, and I got it. And so I would go between downtown Baltimore and the medical center, and my oasis of liberal arts privilege, so to speak.
Huh.
Now, really fast forward, I've been drawn back into Hopkins as a speaker at their women's leadership conference. I will tell you that is one of the best conferences that I go to. The women that I speak to, such pioneers
Mm-hmm.
in medicine in so many different areas. So it really has come full circle for me, that Hopkins experience.
That's really
Yeah,
cool.
so I really, really like it. And it happened because of the book that I
Yeah.
wrote, that they wanted to have me as a speaker.
Yeah.
So when I went to NYU and I started writing for fundraising, I loved fundraising. I really did. I worked with a lot of the office was all writers, poets, dancers. It was all theater. It was,
Yeah.
because NYU downtown was filled with so many interesting and fun people, and you could take classes for free. And I really loved the education there, and I loved raising money for them.
Wow.
And even though raising money for New York, NYU is sort of, you have to get your stamina up to combat level, but it was a lot of fun and it was
Yeah.
so gratifying.
Yeah.
And from there, you and I were talking about the connections with people.
Yeah.
One of the people, one of the bosses that worked there was going to Rutgers. He knew I was a graduate, and he asked me if I'd come there to work for Rutgers.
Oh.
So I did my fundraising for Rutgers for over 12 years. I
Oh.
also loved that university, best value for the money, loved the president.
Yes. Yeah.
Ed Blaustein, may he rest in peace, best president ever. And it was a terrific experience.
Yeah.
So a new president came in, and this becomes a theme for anybody as they go up the ladder and they get closer to the seat of power, that whoever comes in as the new leader really does start to affect their satisfaction at work.
Yeah.
They make changes and people come and go. The president that came in after the great president wasn't very good. In fact, at that time, I had been raising money for a campaign for community diversity and educational excellence. It got lots of awards. New president came in. He said a very bad thing about African Americans.
Oof.
He was tone deaf, and the whole university shut down. And my campaign was coming to an end.
Oh.
And that was one of the incredible experiences where I became a pivot for the president, Black chairman, Black faculty, everybody, because nobody else was talking. So, and trying to bring people together again.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, I'm sure at the time it was incredibly painful and difficult, but I can imagine, I don't mean this to sound trite, you're just trying to raise money for good reasons. Next thing you know, you're navigating all these layers and levels of issues that have so many other implications behind them. And it goes way beyond you trying to bring people together to support good work. And it's like a whole different job.
I'm glad you said that, because people don't realize when you get to fundraising at these upper levels, what you just described goes hand in hand. I mean, you think of what's going on, and I've had it happen at the protests, campuses today. That are going on. And the teams that are trying to figure the best way out between the presidents and the boards, and you bet your fundraisers are involved, because you've got your donors calling. People might think it's all about raising money. No. It is not. It's all about keeping those relationships, honoring those relationships when these really difficult situations arise. You've got to be there and see what you can do.
It's a very different role than you're navigating perceptions, policies, agendas, politics. I mean, politics that go way beyond the campus, that go across the world.
Learning how to survive in these tough situations as a kid, and understanding hostilities between people, and how to bridge hostilities and how to bridge friendships. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud with you that I do enjoy that aspect of the job that doesn't get spoken about. So, for example, at the hospital where I worked, the great hospital, I worked closely with the female scientists on autoimmune diseases. And I learned that 98% of these affect women. So I put together with them a program to investigate and raise money for why does this affect women. Let's bring this out to women to let them know as public information. Let's explore it. And of course, we were bringing it to women of influence and wealth so that they could move the needle. And that is so enriching to be able to do it. Now, does it always work? No, but I have learned dealing with, as they call them, high net worth individuals, they are very interested in the big ideas. And if you have the resources, the people, the brain power to do it, I love getting those people together and figure out, how can you solve this pervasive issue? What can we do about this?
That can be incredibly exciting, even if it doesn't go where you hope it will, to be in a position to facilitate that and to create the kind of trust you need to create with people. So your time at the hospital, I'm trying to put together a little chronology here. You were in the advertising field, then you went over to NYU, and that's really the first time that you really were in a more of a fundraising realm. I mean, you were writing to persuade in advertising, but then really moved it into
Yeah.
more of a fundraising realm. And then from NYU, you went over to Rutgers. And then things got a little dicey there, sounds like. Was that when you went over to the hospital?
Yes. But, and here was my criteria. I was pregnant
Ah,
and I did not want to commute through Penn Station in New
sure.
York. I
Yeah.
was living in New York and commuting to New Jersey, which many people do the opposite.
Right.
And so I wanted to look for a place closer to home.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who recommended me to the hiring manager. I had never worked in a hospital before.
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid to work in hospitals because I didn't think I'd have the emotional stamina to do that.
Oh, interesting.
And in the fundraising world, and I think it was less so then, but it certainly tightened up now. There was this idea that you couldn't transition from higher education to hospital fundraising. They were too different. They're
Mm.
not. But sometimes it's easier structurally for people to see that. But so I went to the hospital and I loved the person I interviewed with, who would then become my supervisor for almost 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And I said to her, I don't know if I can work here and people, if they die and talk to their families. And she said, Robin, no one dies here. We're a happy hospital. We make people better because it's all orthopedics
Love
and
it.
sports medicine and rheumatology. She said, we don't have an ER. Our ER is across the way at Weill Cornell. This is a happy
I
hospital.
love it.
And she was right. It was a happy hospital.
I love it.
And not only that, but I like to do a lot of
Mhm.
athletic things. And the physicians there were phenomenal.
Yeah.
They were so at the top of their game. They
Yeah.
didn't have to be petty and competitive like you might find other people sort of
Mm.
scratching for their spot. And it was
Mm.
a terrific place to work. And they also were unusual in having their own research labs right in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. So you were able to make, I think this is an important distinction too, just from a kind of an academic view of career transitions, because you made a good point about people making that kind of, let's say, leap from academia to healthcare. And yet I'm thinking, well, you were going from academia to what was an academic hospital in some ways. I'm sure
Right,
they were affiliated with Cornell. So,
right.
but I understand there's a distinction there, but you were able to make that
Yeah.
transfer over. Probably it didn't hurt that you were referred in by a trusted individual who
Mhm.
this person who ended up hiring you trusted as well, and you made a good connection. So there are some good ingredients there. And then you were there for 20 years, it sounds
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, yeah, there was the academia to academia. There was, I came from public. Most of my background was public fund universities. This is very
Right,
well resourced private.
right.
In academia, your rolling potential is in your alumni, and
Mm-hmm.
here it was in your grateful patients.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never dealt with grateful patients, but to me, it was one and the same because it's all building relationships. It's just learning what's important to those people.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started the grateful patient program
Oh,
there. I did
nice.
because it made sense to me. They
Yeah.
want to give back. They're so happy. I also hired from outside of the fundraising world, which a lot of people didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
But if I needed somebody to do events and somebody had done media and events for something else and they had all the same skills, I would hire them.
I can appreciate that. And yeah,
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of people who came from corporate backgrounds who said,
Mhm.
I've reached a point where I really want to do something different. And there is a way in which certain aspects of fundraising, development work, communications work can really translate over beautifully to, especially in a larger institution, I think. And I've seen some hospitals do that where they've done some very specific recruiting in that way. So it's interesting to hear that you did that as well.
So even though they are drawn to the mission, sometimes it's difficult. I've coached a few people and it's like, I don't know why this didn't work out. It can be a difficult transition, and just learning, maybe as a volunteer first, what the culture is of the
Yeah.
place where you want to work is very, very important. Because
Yes.
there are cultural differences.
I think
I'll just leave
that's
it at that. Mhm.
excellent point. I think that's
Mhm.
true for anyone making a next move, is to
Mhm.
really pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So you were there for 20 years. Then what
Mhm.
happened next?
And then I exited. I had an involuntary exit there. And I decided to write my book because I had never had that happen in my whole career.
Yeah,
I didn't even know how to talk about it.
I bet.
I didn't know other people had had that. So I went to my, fundraising organizational lunches and all that kind of stuff. I'm not somebody who hides. So I went out to find out, well, what's going on here? And I started to talk to people, and suddenly all these people had their own stories about what had happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember clearly, I talked to one woman and she told me her story, and it was for a for-profit. And I said, I really have to record this. I really want to remember what you said. That turned out to be my first interview. And then she said, you ought to speak to this person. And then you ought to speak to this person. And it just snowballed. And I remember, calling women at like 10 o'clock at night after they had put their day to rest and were ready to speak. And after all of these conversations, they would say, this is really therapeutic.
Mm.
One woman in particular, and I'm in touch with a lot of these women still, had met me at a wine bar and the lights were low and she was whispering and she remembered every detail of what happened to her when she was let go.
Yeah.
I asked her when this had happened and she said, oh, it was 5 years ago.
Mm.
So all of that anger, shame,
Yeah.
and secrecy and feeling like what's wrong with me was kept inside. It was a good thing I was a writer because I didn't keep it inside. Writing was cathartic for me as well. I did take another job, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And suddenly, I don't know if you remember this, what people had been keeping quiet about being laid off or fired or reorganized was out in the open because companies were imploding. Weight Watchers made headlines when they called hundreds of people to a Zoom meeting, put them on mute, and said, today's your last day. They had trusted Weight Watchers and it was their family. So these kinds of things started to come out in the paper.
Yeah.
And my book came out in 21, and I had updated it with a preamble about how the pandemic had sent everybody reeling, but it also shone a brighter light on how people got lost once they lost their professional identity that they had had for so long. And someone like me, who was at one place for 12 years and another place for almost 2 decades, I termed us loyalists because we were.
Yeah.
So that meant our identity was really very closely intertwined with the organization.
Absolutely. And the quality of your work and your
All
professional,
of that. All of that.
all of that, integrity, the whole thing. Yeah.
So when that goes, you have to recreate. And I was stunned by the stories women told me about their own experiences. One woman ended up in the ER having a panic attack, another one. I mean, it was very physical how they took this news. I did my research and there really wasn't a whole lot written about this. What I did find were books called like Fired Up by some guy who took it in stride and then just went on and got fired from 3 other jobs and then found himself as an entrepreneur, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but this was all about, as my first section is called, The Loyalist's Guide to Betrayal. Because that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Now, I understand, we all understand that, business is business.
Yeah.
However, there is something disingenuous about businesses calling us all family. So I talk about those kinds of mixed messages,
Mm-hmm.
but bottom line, business is business.
Right.
And when you do or are given the opportunity, I'll call it an opportunity to recreate yourself,
Mm-hmm.
look at it like a business.
Yep.
You're your business, you're the CEO of yourself,
I agree.
right?
Yeah.
You have to make a financial plan for yourself, a
Right.
strategic plan, a tactical plan. You have to gather information about how you sell your product, namely yourself.
Yep.
Whether you go back into a system or you go on your own, you are the CEO of you.
Either
And
way. Yeah.
either way,
But I
Mhm.
I think there's a fine line too between really wanting to put your heart and soul into your work and feel that personal connection and feeling good about it. Because like we've been talking all this time now about, clearly you've been talking with a lot of heart about all the good things you've done over the years and the work itself, and to be able to own that in a way that really gives you a sense of personal and professional pride, right? At the same time, holding, there's a piece of that you hold out and say, yeah, and business is business. And yet you don't want to feel like there's this hard edge or this, you know what I'm saying?
I
It's,
absolutely do. I think
yeah,
it's great the way that you're summarizing it because, yes, if you're in fundraising, your heart is in the mission.
you have
You
to be, right?
see, you have to believe in your DNA that what your organization is doing is making a difference. Because if you don't believe your story,
Yeah,
no one else is going to believe your story.
right,
And at the same time, to hold two things in your head at once to compartmentalize,
right,
to always know your own value separate from
right.
that organization. So I wrote a blog called Moving
Yes.
Forward. One of my articles is titled Why Both Praise and Rejection Are Dangerous.
Mm,
They're dangerous because when you're praised, you feel fantastic and you love everybody who gave you the praise. And when you're rejected, you feel dejected. And it's like, what did I do? What did I do? And you ruminate. And the fact is, if you can keep your value at steady state, they're
right.
not going to send you on a roller coaster. It's hard to achieve, but it's that compartmentalization
Yeah,
of how you feel about yourself. Did you do a
right.
good job? Do you think
Yeah,
you presented yourself as best you could?
right. And to add to what you're saying about that, we don't really know what other people are thinking. We're not mind readers. So it is the kind of thing where and it takes practice.
Right.
And these are people who have held some of the highest positions, and it
That's right.
takes one
Yeah.
pivotal moment like that to be so destructive.
And what you said about assumptions. We make all sorts of assumptions that end up at a negative spot for us, but we have no idea. Yeah. And I would say to trace back the circle from those early experiences through the fundraising career, which I still have, fundraising to me is an enormously rich area of skill sets
Mm-hmm.
that anyone can use.
Mm-hmm.
Finding connections, cultivating the connections, building the relationship in a real way, managing to move it toward a business decision, closing the business decision, maintaining the
Yeah.
relationships. All of those things that we learn how to do are very good tools
Yeah.
for anybody who's looking to transition, create a new chapter, and learn something new. If you enjoy that sort of thing,
Yeah.
while you're searching for a next chapter, it won't seem onerous. It won't seem like you're putting yourself through something that you wish you didn't have to do.
Exactly. I think that's key to anyone who is looking forward to a rewarding career where they are the CEO of their own career. So I encourage people to check out your blog and your book. I think both are enormously instructive and useful to people. What would be the best way for people to learn more about your work today and be in touch if they want to be?
I think to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
It's Robin Merle TPG, the professional guide. If you just look up Robin Merle, you'll find me. But that's the best way because from there you can get to my website and from there you can get to my blogs. And I really do think people should subscribe to the blog, and I'll tell you why. Not only does it have an article that is filled, I think, with humor, but you get this. I love music. You get the song of the month. You get the New Yorker cartoon of the month. You get a book or best advice. And anyone who hears this, please go on Spotify. I wrote a playlist for the book because I know that when we go through different stages of grieving, which I talk about,
Yeah.
there are different tracks to accompany you that are, that you say, yeah, that's okay,
Oh, I
Alanis
love it.
Morissette, okay, she understands this.
Oh, this is terrific. I love it. And all of this will be in the show notes. And
No, that's
wrapping things up, though, I'm going to be making a beeline for all of that. I'm sure I'm already connected to you in many ways, but I'm going to make sure I'm extra connected. Check out your playlists, especially. So, a lot of people listening to this can relate to a number of the things that you're talking about here. And yet they are looking for what's next and thinking about trying to identify that. What would be your best advice to somebody who's thinking about what's next and how to get there?
I think they should talk to as many people as possible. Doesn't have to be long conversations, but let your curiosity be your guide. And I talk about 5 principles of networking. People are kind of pushing away from the word networking. So let's say five principles of having the conversation. Will I learn something new? Will this help me decide on a new direction? Will they be able to help me in any way? Can I help them in any way? And, those are 4 out of 5, but none of those are, can you get me a job?
That's right. That's right.
The idea is, will this be interesting? Will I learn something? Can we help each other? And will it help me get closer to a decision about where to go? So gathering that information, acting on what you're curious about. If you want to take a class on behavioral economics, take a class.
I love it.
Right? If you want to find out, what's going on in AI and how to be a tuner, take a class.
Yeah.
There are so many interesting jobs of the future that revolve around things we can't even imagine. Curating experiences for people in assisted living. Areas, right?
Absolutely.
It's very interesting. So, and it'll keep their inspiration up. It'll keep their hope up. The more they learn, the less they will feel isolated and narrowed.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like I have found a kindred spirit here.
I know I have, Tammy. I've loved our conversations.
There's so much of what you just said that I've been saying to people for years. It's so good to hear someone else say it. Robin, this has been absolutely delightful. Thank you so much for being here. And I can't encourage people enough to check you out. Go to theprofessionalguide.com/blog, as well as checking you out on LinkedIn and all the other places they can find you. And thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Tammy. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of my interview with Robin Merle. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? If you're interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoulerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 253. And while you're there, you can also subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. If you're feeling it, please help me to inspire more people to grow their careers by clicking on the Apple Podcasts button. Leave an honest rating and brief review. That helps the podcast get more exposure, thereby helping more people. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out, Break Through 9 Common Obstacles, and Design a Career that Fulfills You. It's available through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. You can also help sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, your support is acknowledged and appreciated. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.